everybody. It is the Sales Hacker Podcast. It's your host, Sam Jacobs. I'm the founder of the Revenue Collective, and I am the Chief Revenue Officer of a machine learning and big data company called Behavivox, which is building the first ever behavioral operating system. Now, we're here for Friday Fundamentals. If you remember from last week, Friday Fundamentals is a shorter, just 5 to 10 minutes, and I bet sometimes we'll even go shorter than 5 minutes, but it's 5 to 10 minutes in length, focusing on specific tactics, case studies, and insights that we're collecting, that we're hearing from you, the listeners, or that we're discussing amongst the Revenue Collective. Now the Revenue Collective has chapters in Denver, Toronto, London, Boston, New York, and Amsterdam, and growing quickly. And so we've got a group of close to 200 VP level and above sales and marketing executives, and we're talking every single day about the issues that we're facing. Now, before we get started on this episode, we want to thank our sponsor, Outreach. Outreach triples the productivity of sales teams and empowers them to drive predictable and measurable revenue growth. By prioritizing the right activities and scaling customer engagements with intelligent automation, Outreach makes customer-facing teams more effective and improves visibility into what really drives results. Hop over to outreach.io/saleshacker to see how thousands of customers, including Cloudera, Glassdoor, Pandora, and Zillow, rely on Outreach to deliver higher revenue per sales rep. Now, today on Friday Fundamentals, we're going to talk about the progression from SDR to account executive. How long should it take? What you should expect? What you should be measured on? And why it might be better to wait a little bit. So we polled the group, the Revenue Collective, and the consensus was that it should take about 12 to 18 months on that progression from entry-level sales development representative to junior account executive. And so that's the consensus. Now, some of the folks in the group were talking about, really, let's just focus on milestones. Now, what are those milestones? Those milestones are obviously going to include the number of opportunities that you open and that you create. So again, most SDR programs are really based on what's the level of pipeline that you can create. There are some SDR programs that are also based on the amount of closed business that you generate. And then there's finally some programs that are really points-based. They can be about meeting set, sales qualified opportunities. I think the most common, though, is going to be sales qualified opportunities per month. Now, there are other criteria for promotion that you want to think about: testing well on written and role play exams, and alignment with company and team values. But most of the time, it's going to be around your quota attainment relative to pipeline generation. Now, that pipeline generation is going to take place over a ramp period, of course, but what we're hearing from the group is that 12 to 18 months is the amount of time that you should expect to be an SDR. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that if you are promoted before 12 months, the data tells us, and I think Trish Bertuzzi and the Bridge Group have done some research, the data tells us that you have a much greater likelihood of failure as an account executive if you're promoted too soon. So the data tells us that under 12 months, the success rate is just 15%, and over 12 months, it jumps to 60%. So think about that. If you're an SDR and you're promoted to account executive under a year, you have a 85% chance of failure versus a 40% chance of failure when you're promoted to account executive if you just wait a few more months. And so that's a really big reason to really take some time and really learn the business and the product that you're selling before you really push hard for that promotion. Now, that being said, many of the programs that we're seeing obviously have career ladders. So there might be typically 3 ladders within a typical SDR program. And at every level, which you achieve based on some attainment of quota attainment, you get a higher base salary, you get a slightly higher quota and variable compensation, and then you have to achieve again to get to the 3rd level. So one of the members of the Revenue Collective talks about if you're a business development rep, which is their word for SDR, you have to achieve an average of 80% of your fully ramped quota over 3 months, and then you get promoted to the next level. Then you achieve, again, 80% of your quota over the subsequent 3 months, and you get promoted to senior business development manager or senior SDR. Now, the senior business development manager gets a bigger base with a higher quota and is then eligible to be an account executive if there's a spot open. And what this revenue collective member is telling us is that when they do that, they're seeing an 80% time to attainment at time of promotion. So 80% of the AEs hit quota when they manage through that process. So again, it takes about 12 to 18 months. If you're under 12 months, it's a much higher degree of failure. I guess the last thing I would say is that you really have to understand that there is a difference between being a sales development rep and an account executive, and you want to be careful about that. Yes, there are quotas and there's pipeline generation expectations, and some of the great leaders, the great sales leaders out there, people like Mark Jacobs at CB Insights, they will help you develop, they will coach you, but there's really nothing like having a quota as an account executive. And once you have that quota, the clock starts ticking. You're on the clock. You have a responsibility to hit that number, and there's not a lot of going back. And so what I mean is, if you're promoted too early and you become an account executive, there's a very real chance that if you're not ready, you churn out of that organization fairly quickly. So I would really caution people to take that time, take that 12 to 18 months, really learn the business, find an organization that has some of those ladders that we just described, typically 3 ladders on the way to becoming a junior account executive, and use that time so that when you are promoted to account executive, you have a much higher likelihood that you're going to attain your quota and become that superstar that you know you are. So this has been Friday Fundamentals. We're at about 6.5 minutes. I'm trying to keep this short and pithy. If you want to reach out to me, always feel free. You can reach me at linkedin.com/in/SamFJacobs. We want feedback. We want to hear about the tactical issues that you're facing. We want to help you with negotiation, with cold calls, and all of those things on Friday Fundamentals. Of course, we also want to thank our sponsor, Outreach, and we will see you next Friday.